Hello, this is Jonathan Wood from Soft Circuits, and in this video I want to provide an introduction to the Windows controls that are available for you in your MFC applications. Now, controls can be used like any other window at any location and however you like using custom programming, but in general most of the time that you're going to use controls, it will be on a dialog box, and so that's where we're going to focus. This is more of a beginner level introduction to the controls, although we'll try to get into into a little bit of detail, and it should be for anybody who is trying to get up to speed in Windows and MFC programming and wanting to use controls to display and allow the user to edit and input information. So we'll start by creating a new project. And this is an MFC application, and we'll just call it controls. And we'll need a dialog box to test this, so we'll just go ahead and create the application type and set it to dialog, and I'll accept all the defaults beyond that. And if we go to our resource tab, we'll find our dialogs, and here's our main dialog, the one that was created by the wizards. I'll get rid of that. And over here we have our toolbox, and this is basically our list of controls that we can place on the dialog box, and those are the controls that we'll display. The first is a pointer. That's actually just, for example, if you click button and you change your mind, you don't want to put the button down, you can click pointer again so that no other control is selected. And the one I want to start with is static text. And a static text, sometimes called a label. And let me just go ahead and put the grid on. It does nothing as far as allowing the user to edit data. It simply displays information, and it's often used in combination with other controls. For example, let's add an edit control next. And as you can see, we've got them together, and we want to pair them up. And so let's set a caption of our static control, and let's call it enter text. Now, if I do the and symbol before the E, what that does is it makes the letter that follows the and symbol a hotkey, and we can see it here. And actually, depending on the version of Windows you have, you don't see it here. It shows up as an underline, in this case on the E in enter text, and we don't see it here. But if we test our dialog box, we see we don't see it either. But if I press the Alt key, the underline does show up, and that's attached. It depends on your, like I say, your version of Windows and your Windows settings. And since it's an Alt E would be the key to select that control, that's what the underlined E means. It only shows up on some versions and some settings when you first press the Alt key. Now, what the hotkey does is it selects that control, and depending on the control, selecting it this way with a hotkey can have different effects. Now, in the case of the static text, the hotkey doesn't do anything to the static text. The static text cannot receive the focus or become the active control. However, what it does do is when you select the Alt-E, the Windows will set the focus to the next control that can receive the focus. Now, if we go into Format, we can select Tab Order, and there will be the controls, as we can see, are in the order they were created. Let's go ahead and set the static text as the first control, the edit control as the second, and then our two buttons. So what this will do is when you press the Alt key, the Alt-E key, it sets the focus to the associated edit control. So let's go ahead and run our application. and we can see by default the first control that can accept the focus has the focus with the flashing caret in the edit control. But if I tab to cancel and then I press Alt, my underline shows up, and I'm going to press Alt E, and that puts the caret back in the edit control. So we've effectively created an edit control with a label and a hotkey to get to the edit control. Now, of course, there are techniques for retrieving and setting the information, in this case in the edit box. We're not going to focus on that in this lesson. Basically, we're just going to explain the controls and try to give you an idea of the controls that you might choose to allow the user to display and edit certain kinds of information. So the next control we're going to take a look at is a checkbox. A checkbox allows basically two states, checked and unchecked, so it's a Boolean value, and unlike the edit control, it has its own label. So we'll go ahead and put set the text for the label. Again, I'll use the and symbol, and we'll say check me, and let's go ahead and run that. So again, we start out with the focus in the edit control, and as I press the tab, actually as I press tab, it's going to go to our buttons. Let me go ahead and change the tab order again and run it. And so if I press tab, we can see that the check box gets the focus. Notice that it doesn't check or toggle the check state. Now I can press the space bar and that checks it. Press it again and it unchecks it. I can also click with the mouse either on the box or the text. And if I tab to another button, another control such as a cancel button, and I hold down the Alt key, now we can see my C has a underscore on it. And if I do Alt C, that does two things. It sets the focus to that control, and it also automatically checks it. So that provides a convenient way for the user to check checkboxes and from the keyboard, although most will do it from the mouse. And let's move this up. And one other thing about the checkbox, there is a property called tri-state, and if we set that to true, and I'll run it, that gives the checkbox three states. We're unchecked now. If I click it, we're checked, and then third click is kind of an in-between or indeterminate state, and that could be used for when you have a checkbox that could be yes or no, checked or not checked, but also has a state that is neither of those. Okay, and I want to show a combo box next. Now a combo box has a couple of different styles. Normally you would set the text from code, but we can also set that in the properties here. And we do that by going to the data property. And now on an edit control or a combo box, there's several styles. This one I cannot set the height, but if I click over the down arrow, I can, and that does not affect the height of the control when it's closed, but it does affect the drop down list. So let's go ahead and run that and look at that. And there's the items I entered, and notice that actually when it's empty it would have come down the full length that I sized that as, and because it's got items That only happens when it's empty. When it's got items, it automatically sizes to the items. And in this case, notice we have a list, and if we select the list, it shows up. The main point of a combo box is it allows you to have a list, but when it's closed up, it doesn't take up as much screen space. And in addition, you can enter custom text as well. So that's called a drop down. We can change the type. We can go a drop list. Now a drop list is the same as a drop down, except you cannot edit it. You can only select from the list. And finally, the third type is a simple. And what that does is, instead of a drop-down list, there's actually two windows, a list and the edit control. And there's no drop-down. It's always open. It looks like a drop-down that's always open. And there's a list box. And again, we'll add some data. Actually, the list box would require us to enter data from code. So we're not going to do that. I do want to show that just basically what we're looking at. Let me go ahead and run that. So whereas a combo box is a combination edit control and a list is just the list portion. And in both the cases of the combo box and the list box, we can also add a label above them, and we can give it a hotkey. And selecting the hotkey will select the list or combo box control if that's the next item in the tab order that can receive focus. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to change my combo box back to a drop down. And the next item I want to look at is a group box. Now a group box is very much like a static text control. It does not allow the user to edit it, and it's meant for giving a label, and you can give it a hotkey, in which case the next control that can receive the focus, which would normally appear within the frame control, would get the focus. But in this case, what I want to do is I want to put a couple of radio buttons in here. And since radio buttons, which are very similar to checkboxes, they can have their own hotkeys, we don't really need a hotkey in the frame. So let's add 3 radio buttons. And let's run our dialog and look at that. Now, you notice I can select radio buttons, and Windows automatically detects that I have several radio buttons together, and by clicking one, if it finds that I have others in the same in a sequential order in the tab order, it will uncheck all the others in that same range. So checking one unselects the other, and in fact that's why they're called radio buttons. It's kind of like the old car radio buttons, where you push one station and any other previously selected station is unselected. Now there's a little more to this than you might think. Notice I can push the up and down key to select the different controls, and there's a couple of things going on here. The best way to do this, first of all, you've got to make sure they're all in the tab order sequentially. So they are, but let me just put them before the controls. And there's what we have here is a range, a group of controls, and we want to indicate that that's what they are. And I think the best way for me to explain this is to create another group box, another frame control rather, and this one I'm going to put check boxes in. We've already looked at a checkbox, but here's 3 more. And let me take back that static frame control, and let's let me show one thing here. Now, if we select this radio button, it has a focus, and I press down. Now this one has it. Press down again. And now it goes to the OK button. And press down again, it goes to the cancel button. And then it goes to the checkbox. And we don't really want it to do that. We want to kind of lock those in as a group. And so we're going to do that. Visually, we do it by surrounding in a static frame. But we're going to do another thing too. And the way we do that is the first item in the group, we set its group property to true. And let's bring a group box or a frame control back to these. And I want to let me reset the tab order. So even though in the case of checkboxes you can select multiple ones, in this case there's still a group and we want to treat them as such. So we'll set the group to the first one. Now you also have to set the group of the first character or the first control that comes after the control in a group. So the next one in the tab order after the last radio button is the static. So I'm going to set that to true. And the next control after the last one in the checkbox group is the OK button. So I'm going to set the true to that group property. So just to sum up, when you have a group of controls such as the radio button and you want to specify they're a group, you set the group property of the first control to true, and you set the group property of the next control after the last radio button to true. And let's run that and see what that does. Now it looks the same, but if I select this radio button and I press down, and now if I press down again, it actually wraps around. And the same if I go up and I press up again, it wraps around. So those behave like a little control or a little list or menu. Same with the checkboxes. They loop around and go both ways. So I specified that's a group. They are visually and they are functionally as well. So as we can see, there's plenty more controls. In most cases you will be using buttons and checkboxes and edit controls. Those are the most common controls. So I hope this has provided a little introduction into how some of those function and how you might use those in your own applications, and allow you to make the most of the controls that are available in Windows.